that's pay-per-views for you. You do what you have to do to get eyeballs.
You know shit about boxing.
Joe's obviously knocking on the door now for a world title shot. There's a bit of a logjam at the very top of the division. Him against Joseph Parker, it seems like a fight he doesn't need to take. He's WBO #1. He'll get his title shot eventually. Why still challenge him at that high level? It's a risky fight.
It's very risky. And you look at Joe's activity from beating Daniel Dubois in November 2020, took him into the Takam fight. And then from that moment, you're thinking, he's a #1, but when's he going to get his title shot? And you're looking at Usyk. Usyk could have become available kind of early 2021. We had COVID. And then I started thinking, Joe just needs to be in big fights. You look at the heavyweight division in particular, yes, getting world titles is really important, and it's what we've always set out to do. But also you sit on your ass and wait for the big fight to come along, let's say against Usyk, then you lose, then where are you? So he needs to be built appropriately and have more and more high-profile fights. So one of our targets was to make him a pay-per-view fighter. And I think this is the perfect introduction. It's a fight I've invested a lot of time in. I fought really hard to put it on. I started negotiating it really January this year, tons of ups and downs, but I always wanted it to be for an interim title, and it was never guaranteed. But the point about the WBO interim title is when Joe wins and he becomes interim champ, let's assume undisputed happens next year. Let's just assume that, and Fury wins and vacates. At that moment with the WBO, the interim gets elevated to full champion.
Okay.
And I'm sure there'll be lots of, paper champion, email champion, whatever. But Joe Joyce will be WBO heavyweight champion after 15 fights.
Yeah.
And, the stick you might get for it is overcome by that. And he should be beating Parker. I mean, beating Parker in a fight is worthy of a world title. He's a former world champ. He's one of the very top guys outside of the true elites, AJ, Fury, Usyk.
Well, also, if the title was vacant now, they would be the two selected to box for them.
Right. So it's not like he's going to beat someone, number 10 in the WBO and then get elevated in that way. So I will give it an air of credibility if he does get elevated. If he doesn't get elevated, the other reason for being the interim is you get a much more preferential purse split in the event of his mandatory against Usyk, if it's Usyk or Fury or whoever it may be. So there's a very big prize, Danny, in the WBO interim. That's why we took it, #1. And #2, increases Joe's reputation. When you have a pay-per-view, it is promoted more heavily and more people will know Joe Joyce. And I think in the heavyweight division, as you've seen even with Joshua now, Joshua White, Chisora, all those guys have suffered losses, significant losses. And certainly for Chisora, it doesn't affect his marketability.
No.
And is AJ Fury going to be less of a fight if it happens because AJ lost? Maybe in kind of your eyes, Danny, or boxing purist eyes, for undisputed, it would have been amazing. But is it going to cut through to the casuals? Yeah, of course it will. I mean, after what AJ did in the ring, it's a huge fight. I don't think it's any less because he lost.
I think it might be a little bit less in that he's coming straight off the defeat. I think it's still fresh in people's minds. I think that's the only commercial kind of aspect where I'd be.
Is it going to have less views because of it?
Maybe slightly than it would have had if it was two guys for all the belts and everything else.
Yeah.
But not significantly, I mean, it's still an enormous fight, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that losses, I think, as a heavyweight, but heavyweights with big personalities, losses can affect you less. But Joe's got to get to a level where he doesn't lose. It's ultimately a big game of snakes and ladders. And so when he fought Dubois, had he lost that, the snake takes him right back down to British level. And no disrespect, but he's fighting a Nathan Gorman or Fabio Wardley if he lost that fight. But he's kept going up and up and up. And I think this isn't the final ladder for Joe by any means, but it's a very important one. Beat Parker, and you show people, okay, guy's pretty elite.
Yo, Danny Flexen here. Think you know shit about boxing? There's only one way to find out. Listen to the full podcast via one of the links in the description or go to secondsoutboxing.podbean.com.
You know shit about boxing.